The information contained in this podcast is an expression of opinion and does not constitute investment advice. This is the Gold Money Podcast with Alistair McLeod, keeping you up to date with expert opinion on precious metals and the markets.
Hello, this is Alistair McLeod on behalf of Gold Money, and with me on the line from Boulder, Colorado is Mike Krieger, who runs a very well-followed blog called libertyblitzkrieg.com. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Oh, thanks for having me on. This is a great first time to be with you, so I'm very happy.
Well, that's fantastic. I was amused at your description that you described yourself, I think, as a recovering Wall Street employee. Tell us a bit about your Wall Street experience.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So the reason I sort of said it that way is for a few things. I mean, number one, I genuinely feel that way in the sense that I wouldn't say necessarily indoctrinated, but you get thrust into this world of Wall Street and the sort of fast pacedness of it all, the money and the lifestyle, and it can be very enchanting and addictive. And so by recovering, I sort of mean, I sort of had an awakening. I sort of realized how the system operates on a macro level, whether it's central banking or the political structure. And sort of the role that Wall Street plays in that, it's a key middleman, it's a key support system of the greater power, economic political power structure. And once I realized that, I really couldn't continue to live my life the way I did, career-wise or anything. So I left. So ever since, it's sort of coming to terms with how I used to view the world and how I view the world now. In addition, I feel like there are a lot of people out there that also have left Wall Street or are considering leaving Wall Street or unhappy on Wall Street that they can relate to that statement. So that's really why I wrote it that way.
Well, yes, I think it's undoubtedly true that quite a lot of people have had a sort of conventional education when it comes to economics, and you have an economics degree as well, I think.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, sometimes I joke about that. I had maybe one or two classes where I feel like I actually learned something. But I have an undergraduate economics degree from university, that with a double major in Spanish. So yeah, I mean, I was taught economics at a good fine institution here in the States from the standpoint that it's taught. And then I worked in as the financial services industry, Wall Street, Lehman Brothers, and Sanford Bernstein for 10 years. And I pretty mumuch applied absolutely nothing that I learned in my job.
Well, that is interesting because it's not just a question of an employee working Wall Street and then sort of questioning the values. I mean, it's the whole of your educational background you've had to overturn. I mean, I'm assuming you weren't educated in the economics of the Austrian school, but maybe the neo-classicists. I mean, so it's actually quite a change, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I've written about this before in the past. I recall, the way that you were sort of introduced to economic thought. It was always either it's a monetarist, let's say, standpoint, or a fiscal standpoint, or Keynesian or Friedman, let's say. But the premise that I found behind both of those was when there's a problem, or generally speaking, with an economy, you can either use tax and spend and policy to adjust, or you could use central banking, monetary policy. But it was always this framework of top down sort of central planning. So there was never even a mention that you could just leave things be and let the market figure it out. That's the more interesting thing when I reflect back upon it.
Yeah, I know, and it's sort of the tendency with Keynesian economics is to try and develop more and more tools of intervention rather than, as you say, just sort of stand back and let people run their own lives. And I mean, one of the greatest fallacies, it seems to me, is that somehow government is meant to do a better job of spending our money than we do ourselves, and I find that one a little difficult. Anyway, moving on slightly, you must be really interested as an ex-commodities dealer, seeing what's going on in gold and silver at the moment. I mean, as we speak, I think gold is knocking on the $1,700 level, trying to get through. Silver has had a very, very powerful run and is just refuses to break back down below $32. It's currently, I think, $32.20 as we speak. This is great stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, when I look at the precious metals markets, gold and silver, and I think about the backdrop, it is so powerfully bullish to me right now that it's underappreciated, I think. And let me go into a few things. So first of all, as we all know, us that study the precious metals markets, you've had a consolidation in gold for about a year, in silver for about 18 months, really, or more. And so that's led to an attitude, at least here in the States for sure, of total complacency, where even the diehard precious metals bulls are sort of so beaten down and bored and frustrated that they always are waiting for the next raid or the next smash. And then the general public is completely out to lunch. When I looked this morning at the chart, what's so interesting is the chart of gold in euros is right back at last September's high. So we're really close for gold breaking out in euros. So on the continent, I'm sure the attitude is much different than it is in the States. And I think that's important for people over there to even realize that people here have they're not even thinking about it.
No, I think that is interesting. I mean, there's no doubt about it that a lot of the players in the precious metals, I mean, this is my feeling of it. I'd be interested in your views. A lot of the players were basically in there short term, or they would describe themselves as investors. And an investor, by definition, is someone who buys something with a view to selling it. Right. So people like that are only interested in a game that's in play, that's running, as it were. And so they've sort of rather gone from the scene completely, and it's just left the few diehards. I mean, obviously there are bound to be a few people who sort of unquestioningly support gold and silver, but then there are people perhaps like you and me who follow a more sort of, if you like, libertarian or Austrian economic philosophy, and therefore have a grasp of the money side of things and how that relates to gold. I mean, we're about the only people left standing in this market at the moment. Would you think that's a fair analysis?
Yeah. So what I try to explain to people is for the next big move up, what we really need, to break out and have another leg higher is you need a couple of things. I think one is you just needed sentiment to get down to a more reasonable level, and we are definitely there on that front. So it checks that box. The other is what I like to say, a sort of spark, a light bulb moment where people realize, and maybe it's a new group of people, or maybe it's the existing group that already owns some precious metals that decides they need more exposure, and some sort of light bulb will go off in their heads, and that will cause a marginal money flow into the space. And that'll be physical, it'll be futures, it'll be miners, it'll be everything. And I think we are on the cusp or the very beginning stages of that happening right now. So we need to watch very closely, and people need to understand that what the central bankers, the central planners have been doing is not much, but saying they're there. So most people feel like, well, I don't need to increase my exposure because they're not really doing anything. They're not really expanding the balance sheets. But it looks to me like push is coming to shove, particularly in the Eurozone with the ECB. And when they actually do something, you're going to see gold and euros hit new highs, and it's going to be a whole new paradigm for these metals. So yeah, I think we're there. I think the gun is sort of loaded and ready to go off, and there.
You make a very interesting comment about a spark to ignite the market. And I note that George Soros and Paulson, I can't remember which Paulson it is, yeah, but the one who's added to his position. I mean, these guys, and Soros is an interesting one because his economics is effectively Keynesian, so far as I can understand it, and yet he has loaded up on more SPDR ETF. So is that the spark? Do you think the billionaires are beginning to get So worried about the situation, perhaps. I'm not sure that's quite the right word, but they're rather like rats that may be deserting the establishment ship. Do you think we're beginning to see that with those two big names, being the first, if you like, into the lifeboat?
Sure. I wouldn't say so much with them as much as others. So, for example, Soros's fund has been in and out of gold, GLD, on and off forever. And so, yes, they've recently increased their exposure more. And Paulson he's sort of doubled, or not doubled down, but he's increased his already large bet on gold. So these are sort of guys that have already been there on and off. And so I don't think it's providing the psychological spark yet that we need, although it's certainly interesting movements under the surface. I do, however, believe that in this last year of consolidation, a lot of the wealthy, and that would include probably politicians and Wall Street people, have been using this sort of consolidation to buy up precious metals. And I've posted a couple of articles now about how in Italy there's 28,000 pawn shop, basically cash for gold shops, and how in Portugal it's also like one of the big booming businesses. What's happening here is the poor Italians and middle-class Italians and Portuguese are being forced essentially to sell their gold to pay rent and eat food. And guess who's buying it? It's people that are aware that they need protection. So to me, this whole consolidation has been sort of a fleecing of the weak holders and unfortunately the poor that need to sell their metals into the hands of those that are aware. And that seems to be drying up, though, in a lot of these countries. And that's why I think that's partly, again, why I think we're about to take another leg higher. But I think more than anything else, Alistair, it's going to be two things. It's going to be price is going to get people back excited, and it's going to be expansion of government balance sheets or desperate moves by governments to stimulate their economies. And I think both of those are happening as we speak.
Yeah, which neatly, I suppose, takes us into, if you like, the problems that governments in particular face. I mean, we started off with a banking crisis 5 years ago. We still have a banking crisis. We haven't had the economic recovery to rescue the banking system, and there's no sign of that. If anything, that seems to be disappearing further over the horizon. Meanwhile, the cost of all this, plus the off-balance sheet costs of welfare, are mounting up on the government's accounts, and certain governments are finding it very, very hard to fund this. I mean, when is this going to end? Do you think? This is a very, very difficult situation, and I don't think anyone can see a way out of it.
No. So this is why. I mean, this is essentially why I've put a lot of things in my own life on sort of hold to dedicate myself to, becoming informed in this, being, I guess, a sort of financial activist out there on the internet and et cetera. And really is because of the fact that we are in such a dangerous position. As you mentioned, one that has no easy solutions, that, it's been my position for years now that this will be to shake the world, I guess, that we will live in 10 years from now will be nothing like the world we live in today. And there's two ways that we could go. One would be, which is, of course, what the power structure is pushing for. And you can see this in Europe and you can see this in the United States, which is further centralization of power, further demonization of markets, and putting influence and power into bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats in a lot of cases, to essentially, because they know what's best for us. And that's one route. And you see, trying to crack down on the internet and surveillance, et cetera. It's very prevalent here in the US. And I know in the United Kingdom as well, because I've been following that too. Like Project Inject, I just read about. It's very scary. Or the other, though, would be in the ashes of this current system, we create a more decentralized, more free market, more liberty, more freedom society. And I do think that's possible because of things like the internet and social media, and all of these things allow us to actually connect with other individuals across the world and actually change the world for a decentralized future. So this is really the battle. And I think every single citizen of every single country in the world needs to understand it's going to be different. Do you want more centralization and a feudalistic type society, or do you want a more free, dynamic society for the world? And of course, I go for the latter. But this is a war, and we need to all understand that, and we need to pick sides now.
I think that analysis is fair, but it sort of rather suggests we have a choice in the matter. I mean, it sort of implies that you think that we can sort of, become more and more controlled, and the system can be, if you like, stopped from falling over as long as that process of increasing control continues. This undoubtedly is what the Keynesians, I think, are in effect recommending. For goodness sake, let's not have the market actually impose disciplines on us. But that can't continue forever, can they? Sooner or later it's got to stop. Sooner or later, it's going to fail.
Right. So what I find very interesting, and I don't know your position on this, but obviously I'm a gold and silver person, but I've been following the sort of Bitcoin story very closely as well, and how that's gained traction, and how WikiLeaks was actually able to continue to operate and accept donations via Bitcoin when Visa and Bank of America and all the payment processors cut them off. And that got me thinking, this is really interesting what's happening. There's obviously this movement to move towards more gold and silver. There's obviously this Bitcoin movement. And so what I think is happening is under the surface, as we speak, as things are crumbling, different currencies are coming up, different philosophies. People are actually transacting in Bitcoin, for example. And I know with gold money, you used to be able to do that. I'm not sure if that's still an option, but to pay in like digital grams. But the point is, I think the more infrastructure we lay down for alternatives, while the system is panicking to stay alive, the better chance we have to have these alternatives be the mainstream when the system craters ultimately. So that's how I see it.
Yeah. I go along with that. Really, I think what you're referring to here, Mike, is the big risk that we face at the end of the day, is that governments do not actually understand, and particularly central bankers, understand the risks they are taking with currency, with the paper currency, which is only backed by the promise, the unwritten promise by the governments that the paper currency for which they're responsible actually has any value. Now, this is interesting because that could be tested in the Eurozone, because there you've got, 17 governments. Half of them seem to be bust. The other half seem to be backing off. Who stands behind the paper currency? What's going to happen to the euro as the Eurozone disintegrates, which looks quite a likely outcome? Or the alternative outcome is Mr. Draghi gets his way and prints money like fury, which will probably undermine the euro anyway. So if the sequence of events is that things happen in the Eurozone first to provide a lesson for the rest of us, do you think we'll learn from that before it is too late?
Well, I think we are learning every day, in the sense that I believe more and more people are waking up to what's going on and trying to remove themselves from the system. But it needs to be more, of course. And again, I don't sort of. My view is very. I sort of take a very hard stance, in the sense that I already am looking way beyond the sort of collapse of this monetary system. I don't even like to even talk about, the monetary system is going to collapse. I guarantee I have that as 100% certainty. So what my concern is, again, is that we need to not allow these same clowns that are putting us into this pit, that are burying us in this fiat feudalism, to be able to control the debate once all their paper money project burns into flames. We need to not allow them to say, we blame the gold speculators, or we blame this, this or that. It's their fault. We all need to point fingers at them right now and start to figure out solutions so that we can determine our own destiny and what kind of system we want afterwards. So I don't know how long they can drag this on or not, but this system is terminal. And it's probably going to go up in flames within the next few years. So, that's essentially why I'm in gold.
Right. No, I can understand that. So I think if I can put what you're saying another way, Mike, if the Eurozone blows up first, that isn't going to change the course of events and the views, if you like, in the Fed and the U.S. Treasury. It's not going to change anything. They're going to sort of maybe intensify what they're doing, perhaps, rather than sort of stand back and think, hold on a minute, we got to rethink this right from the ground up.
Oh, sure. No, these guys are, everything I've learned about watching these central planners that are currently in power is that they are 100% convinced they're smarter than everyone else and they know what's best for everyone else. So a person like that, a personality like that, when they're wrong, they don't admit they're wrong, right? They blame someone else, or they try to cover it up, or they do more of the same, or they crack down on people that disagree with them. So that's what I've seen. That's what I would expect. I would expect absolutely no lessons to be learned whatsoever from the top. I would expect that when they're proven wrong, for them to clamp down further and double down on their stupidity, which is what they've done. And so, look, we need to be sovereign human beings, sovereign states. We need to stop being complicit little farm animals and be human beings, and essentially my view as well is that when enough people are awake, and they decide they've had enough, the power structures can't continue to do whatever they want. And so that's what we need to happen. And it needs to be peaceful, and it needs to be an intellectual revolution, and it needs to be, people in different countries connecting with one another and saying, you're not my enemy. My government is the enemy, essentially, in some ways. And that's my view, at least.
Right. Okay. That is extremely clear. Now, I think von Mises, his analysis, if he was alive today, of this situation would be, after saying, "I told you so." Not that he ever had that sort of arrogance about him,
right.
But I think everything that's happened, he would have expected, and certainly if you read Human Action, it's all written in there. You can see what's happening. The conclusion that von Mises came to is that so long as this course is continued, the inevitable result is the destruction of paper money. So that, in essence, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And when people look at even a digital currency, let's say like a Bitcoin, they say, well, this is created out of nothing. And well, so is the money now. And someone made a really good point. A friend of mine the other day, he said, we need to think about this. Banks and others are getting money at 0%, right? This created money that has no backing, that is vapor at 0%, and then lending it at higher percent, 6%, 7%. How can something, right, with no intrinsic value that's created out of thin air be given to one group of preferred players, and then they're allowed to lend it at a percentage interest rate? It's crazy. And so people need to understand the scam. The money is bad. The whole system is fraud. We need to start over. And we need, the rule of law to be established again in the West. And
I think exactly. I think, Mike, they call it a license to print money. But anyway,
but then it gets loaned out, right? But then it gets loaned out at a high percentage. I mean, look at credit card in the States. Credit card interest rates are double digits, high double digits. I mean,
yes, and if you stayed on Wall Street, how rich you would be.
Right. I mean, look, imagine that. Someone let me borrow something that you create out of thin air, out of vapor at 0%. Let me lend it to some poor person at 18%. Isn't that the best scam? I mean.
Well, it's pretty good, isn't it? I mean, I take the point. I mean, I think really, on a sort of closing note, the whole of the sort of central banking franchise system breeds inevitably corruption in relationships, really, between the commercial banks and government, and the two things sort of get so close together, and one lot don't understand. I mean, the government probably don't understand what's actually happening to them. I mean, they turn around and ask, we got a financial problem. I'll go and ask my banker and see what he says about it. And of course, the banker will give him an answer which is very much supports his vested interest. But anyway, we could go on and on about that. Tell me, Mike, is there any other way in which our listeners can find you? Because you've got libertyblitzkrieg.com, which I think I mispronounced actually in the introduction.
No problem. So I launched a blog site called Liberty Blitzkrieg, .com. You could just search my name, Michael Krieger. You could search Liberty Blitzkrieg, whatever you want. And I launched in April, and it's the support I've gotten, the views, the comments, everything has been outstanding. So for those listeners that are not familiar with my website, but have probably read my articles on Zero Hedge, because I've been posting there and I continue to for over 2 years now. You can find me at that site. If you want to send me a message, there's a contact tab on the menu bar where you can go in there and send me an email through that. And I'd be happy to respond and engage in dialogue. And more importantly, what I suggest people doing is signing up. It doesn't cost you anything. On the right sidebar, you sign up. You get every blog post I do goes right to your email box. And you can also follow me on Twitter. I've started actively using Twitter as of a few months ago, and I find it a very powerful tool to connect with people and get information across. So I would, if you like what you hear on this interview, I would encourage you to please go to my site and sign up to get my material or send me a message.
Well, I think that's great. And Mike, thank you very much indeed. And let us hope that you're wrong.
Well, no, look, I mean, I'm actually kind of optimistic. I think that we can establish a better world afterwards. But no, I don't think there's any reforming or tweaking or anything that can be done to save this system as it is. No, I don't. Nor do I think it's worth saving.
No, I think I would personally agree with you there. Anyway, Mike, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Alistair. I appreciate it.
Subscribe to the Gold Money newsletter at www.goldmoney.com to receive email updates on new articles, videos, and iTunes podcasts from our Gold Research section.